Welcome, everybody, to the Reco12 Ask It Basket. This week, I'm super excited to sit down with Michelle. Typically, we have Robert with us, and last time we had Robert and Michelle with us. Today, Robert is unable to be here, but that is okay. I am super excited to sit here with Michelle K and ask some questions, have some conversations, dive deep into a few, things in her experience, strength, and hope. Maybe me chime in with some of my experience, strength, and hope, and just have this conversation of questions and answers and go back and forth. Michelle, why don't you take just a second and introduce yourself?
You got it. My name is Michelle. I'm an alcoholic and I'm an addict. I'm so excited to be here with all of you today. This structure of the Ask It Basket is one of my favorite things. I feel like it gives us a chance to kind of dive in on certain areas of our life, but especially recovery. And I'm passionate about working in recovery with other people and other women. I have a sobriety date of November 5th, 2023, but that's not my longest stint of sobriety. So I know what it's like to fall down and get back up and fall down and get back up, as well as having, a relapse after long-term sobriety. Almost 8 years is right where I was at before I relapsed last year. And you know what the big book says, 1,000 forms of fear. I wasn't spiritually fit. And today I really understand the difference between believing in God and trusting God. And so that's really where I hope my heart takes us today, is just being able to express how important it is for our faith and our trust, really, that all of our will goes into our higher power's hands. And we just choose to not live in self will, but his will for our life. That's where I'm at today.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Michelle, and thank you for providing an opportunity for me to also share a little bit. Like you, I also had a reset of my sobriety date in April earlier this year, and it was something that hit me, well, from my perspective, out of the blue. But as I look back at it, I see, it's easy to let up on this spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels, but we're in trouble if we do. But that was after almost 9 years of continual sobriety. And so you and I were walking a similar path. And thank you for sharing that and allowing me to also share that with you and with those who may be listening. There is hope, just because there's um, a a slip, a relapse, or whatever we want to call that requires us to reset and come back to some semblance of starting from a different perspective. It does not mean it's the end. But for us to drink is to die, correct? But
Absolutely.
God is amazing. His power is amazing. So Michelle, as you and I spoke a little bit before we started recording this morning, I was sitting down with one of my sponsees, and we were reading the big book together out of Bill's story on page 15. And there was a paragraph here that just really hit me hard as I was thinking about what we could begin our conversation on in this Ask It Basket format. And first of all, the question that I had that I'd like to ask, but follow up with reading this and commenting on that, is: has the relationship with your loved ones evolved, been healed, changed, improved, or maybe not? But here's where I read with my sponsee. Once again, this is on page 15 of the fourth edition of the big book in Bill's story. We commenced to make many fast friends, and a fellowship has grown up among us, of which it is a wonderful thing to feel a part of. The joy of living we really have, even under pressure and difficulty. I have seen hundreds of families set their feet in the path that really goes somewhere. I've seen the most impossible domestic situations righted, feuds and bitterness of all sorts wiped out. I have seen men come out of asylums and resume a vital place in the lives of their families and communities. Business and professional men have regained their standing. There is scarcely any form of trouble and misery which has not been overcome among us. And that's where I want to pause here and just kind of go into that. So as I read that, and based on the question that I asked, Michelle, what are your initial thoughts, experience, strength, and hope on that?
My relationships with my loved ones has drastically changed throughout time, but that has gone in seasons for me. I am a single mom. When I was first introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous into a 12-step program, I was a single mom of one, my son. He was 4.5 at the time. In my time throughout my journey of recovery and sobriety on and off, I am now a single mom of two children, and I've been married twice within that time. So again, I was introduced in my early 20s. Now I'm in my 40s. Will date myself a little bit. But that's gone in seasons. And I think what stands out the most for me first is the love I always knew I had for my son, the love I know I have now for my children, the love that I knew I had for my family, and yet my addiction got in the way of that. That was really, when they say that alcohol is cunning, baffling, and powerful, drugs and alcohol and really self harming behavior had such a hold on who I was. And I was just bound in shame. And I didn't understand for so long why it was so important for me to believe in a God of my understanding, to have a higher power. My little girl upbringing didn't really open my eyes to a God that I wanted to understand. I actually really didn't want to understand any of that at all anymore. And so my relationship with my family also shifted around my relationship with my higher power because my family unit was connected to the God of my understanding that I grew up with. And they had a really hard time when I wasn't religion, right? When I found a way of life that was not religion or religious based. Um, and there's been distances. I'm one of six children, and my younger brother, David, he has 16 years of sobriety now. He's actually been sober longer than he ever drank or used, which is mind-blowing to me. I love that for him. And my brother had a spiritual experience without ever being introduced to the 12 steps or the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. In his journey, he reached his bottom, that place, right, where we're at the edge, where we know we cannot live with it, we cannot live without it. And he cried out for help. In his journey, he read the Bible front to back and had a spiritual experience, and God did for him what he could not do for himself. And my brother knows what it's like to have that obsession, that, the mental, bodily, and physical, like everything transformed, and God became very real to him, and he stayed sober. That wasn't my case. That's not my story back then. And, I really bring that back to I sat in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous for so long, and they said, read the first 164 pages front to back. And I'm like, that works for you, but doesn't work for me. Just like I told David, when he said, read the Bible front to back. And I'm like, that works for you, but it doesn't work for me. Um, I take suggestions today. I listen to the suggestions, especially people who have gone before me. I really value their opinions. And today I have a beautiful relationship with my brother, but it's taken a lot of time. I did a lot of damage, and today I'm so grateful that my children want to be a part of my life. They are by far the most forgiving and gracious and loving humans. God has done far more for me than I ever could have done for myself, with them. And although some days I feel like I'm still so undeserving, I'm so grateful to be their mom. But I get to be a mom today. I get to be a sister today. I get to be a friend today because of the 12 steps, because I live in steps 10, 11, and 12. And because I trust that God will keep redeeming the relationships that still are not there. I still have siblings, I still have family members, I still have friends that I lost communication with and that have chosen, to not be a part of where I'm at today. And that's okay. I think that's part of my living amends and really understanding about loving people where they're at and allowing them to love me where I'm at, however they choose. And
Can I jump in
sometimes,
there real quick and ask you a question on that?
of course, you can.
Yeah, so you mentioned, there are some people that I had close relationships previously that were broken, whether it be in addiction or in recovery, that these people don't choose to be where you choose to be. How do you maintain peace with that disconnection, and how do you leave maybe the door open for reconnection in the future, healthy reconnection? What does that look like to you?
With my ex-husband, I've been divorced over 5 years now, and I just barely recently was able to have the opportunity to make that amends in a different way. We actually weren't face to face, but we did have a conversation, and wow, a form of redemption existed there that I never thought possible. And but it took over 5 years for even that conversation to happen. My youngest sister, um, she lives in another state and, has her own wounding and her own struggles. And I continue to pray. That's something that I turn over every single day. She's probably the closest one to me. My two youngest sisters are the ones that are closest to me that um I don't know if or when, those relationships will be mended, but it's just that's the part of trusting. It's turning it over. I know that the second they ever reached out or wanted to have a conversation, I would be more than willing. And I've made it known that I'm here when they are ready, if they're ever ready, but that I won't ever push myself onto them. And I think the best thing that I can do now, it was the same with my son when he went away to college. I saw my son every single day all of his life, and that was my buddy. But I've had time in the time that he went away to college and has put up his own boundaries and not called every day and not FaceTimed every day and started to make his own life choices for him to have time to heal. I was extremely codependent after my divorce. I became very codependent on my son. And I've needed to take ownership for even in my addiction situations that I brought my son into that I had no business ever doing that, and although the conversations have been made, I know I have a lifelong living amends. As many days as God gives me, I choose to live my life one day at a time and serving others and being the best I can be today so that if and when, right, the redemption comes back for any of those relationships, any of the friendships that I lost, I've really needed to look at and own who I was, and when I'm given the opportunity to say, I wasn't a good friend, I didn't show up, I wasn't honest, I took from you, I hurt you, whatever, the list goes on and on. But today, I know the only way that I can be at a place for those relationships when they choose, if they ever choose to come back to me, I want to be in the healthiest and most sober state of mind, or I know that that will never be possible. I'll lose every relationship I have now or could ever gain with drugs and alcohol in my system. And today, that's just not a choice I'm willing to make.
No, thank you for sharing that. And you mentioned that after your divorce, you became very codependent on your son. There was a codependent relationship there. I recently heard someone say that if I am only okay if my kids are okay, or if I am
Mhm.
only okay if my pets are okay, or if I'm only
Yep.
okay if some other person is okay, there's something wrong there. Do you identify with that? And can you kind of teach us how to get out of that if we're in that, how you've moved through that?
Sure, 100%. I've actually only been to inpatient treatment once, and it was when I was 34 years old. That is where I was diagnosed with like severe PTSD, trauma from my childhood, and very much intense codependency behaviors. I didn't even really understand what codependency was, and I'm actually very grateful I was in a really safe place to really figure that out and break that down. But again, right? That was when I was codependent while I was married, and I only knew how to look at that relationship. So, right, as soon as I got divorced, I shifted. And really, it's that need. It is exactly what you're saying. I will only be okay if, and I'm putting all the control into something or someone else's hands. It's the same way that I picked up drugs and alcohol. I'll only be happy if I drink. Oh, I'll only not be sad anymore if I drink. I'm only not going to be mad anymore, or this, right? It was solving a problem. I think codependency is right hand in hand with addiction. We're just replacing that piece, that heart, that hole in our soul, which is exactly what the big book talks about. It's where spirituality and God comes in. I reached for people, places, and things to fill that hole instead of God. and I become codependent on whatever I put in there. Money, men, gambling, sex, drugs, alcohol, food, you name it. I reach for those things with an effect, right? It's why I say I'm an alcoholic. The big book defines an alcoholic as someone who seeks an elusive feeling outside of themselves. And today I have to live a really honest life on why I'm picking anything up, why I'm choosing any relationship, how I'm spending money, what I'm watching, what I'm listening to, where I'm going, right? I ask myself that on a daily basis. Those are my personal inventories. I ask myself because I'm extremely codependent on people, places, and things. And I'll run from really what Michelle feels or what Michelle really wants, what will really make Michelle actually happy and live a peaceful life, right? I mask that with filling that hole. And I learned that in treatment. I learned that codependency for me was exactly that. I'm only going to be okay if. And today I know no matter what, I'm going to be okay because of God. It has nothing to do with Michelle and everything to do with trusting what he has already done for me, what he continues to do for me, and what I know his promises to always do for me. Um, I'm not sure if that breaks it down,
No,
enough, but
yeah, I love that. And I want to dive just a little bit more into that because,
yeah,
let's talk to the newcomer whose relationship with God is such that, well, how am I going to be okay because of God? Because God has not stepped up in my life. That's the perception they have and has
yep,
led me to where I am today. How do we make that shift from I have to reach for the food. I have to reach for the booze. I have to reach for the drugs, for the men, the women, the money, whatever it is to fill that hole in my soul because well, God never filled it before. How do we make that shift?
yeah. I think, coming if you're choosing to go into the rooms, if you're choosing to pay attention to the 12 steps, steps 1, 2, and 3, I used to get very tripped up on because I thought I had to have God all figured out. And when I came into the rooms, exactly what you're talking about. As a newcomer, when I came into the rooms, the God of my understanding was not the God that I wanted to choose. So that was my battle. I don't want that. How can I do that? Steps 1, 2, and 3, and especially in the 12 and 12, it breaks it down very clearly. We're making a choice, a decision to simply say, I'm going to open my hands and I'm going to be open to the idea. I'm open to the idea that could there be a different God of my understanding, a different higher power of my understanding. I'm willing to say, I'm going to just lay this down for a moment. Everything that I think I know, everything I've known up to this place, my decision is I'm just willing to be open to a different idea. It does not say, and it's very clear in the 12 and 12, we do not need to have that figured out. It promises us that through the work of the steps, 4 through 9, is going to give you and create a different world, a process for you where it says spiritual experiences will occur and a God of your understanding, whether it's the same God you came in with and that shifts, or a whole new understanding, it guarantees that in the process of steps 4 through 9, you will have a spiritual experience and it will become real to you. That is where God and who I know of God today, that is how that happened for me. And so to the newcomer, that's my suggestions. Just come in with open hands and be open to the idea. I'm not telling you have to forget anything that you ever knew or anything you believe now. And I'm not telling you what you will believe or what that will exist. That's not for me to decide. It's between you and your higher power, which I love that part. The big book states that it's a personal experience for you and your higher power alone. It's just a pathway for that to literally like be on steroids and become so real and so prevalent to you in your life that that is what you will take into living steps 10, 11, and 12. It will be enough for you, and that's the guarantee. It's okay that it's not enough for you when you first come in. And any person I've ever met with long-term sobriety and shares their story doesn't come in and say, I had God all figured out. I was stoked to be in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. I had, here we go. It was quite the opposite. It was, I wasn't happy to be here. I had no idea right? If I even believed in God anymore, if I wanted to, no, right? It's actually the opposite. And so hear the redemption at the end of the story and know how they got there. And that is through working the steps, but 4 through 9 are crucial.
Mm. No, that's beautiful. You know, one of the things that I've learned in my own walk in recovery, in my own experience, is that, well, most people that come to me and say, "Hey, Justin, I want what you have. Justin, please help me walk this path," are people who come from a very religious background, because that's just the world I walk in. And so a lot of people come to me like that, and it's a really big hurdle to get over, to say, you know what? We make a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. Well, how
Yep.
has that God that you have understood through your life helped you? How can you turn your will and your life over to that God? And we have to go through this process. And I had to go through this process of saying, I have to set aside everything I thought I knew, I thought was absolutely true, and there was no other way to
Yeah.
look at it. I had to set that aside and this um, this let God reveal Himself to me in ways that I was blocked off to, because I didn't want, or didn't think that there was any way that could happen. And
Yeah. I
yeah, go
just
ahead.
want, can I jump in here real fast? Because
Yeah,
we talked
please.
about this a little the last time when I was on with you before, and we talked about kind of my little girl mindset in my big girl body. And so I think that's where this takes my heart is, when I first came into the rooms or anytime I relapsed, right? Every single time I came back in, man, then I was bound by more shame of what did I miss? Oh my gosh, these are my friends, these are my, right? Like I was stuck in this place, and like I've said before, when I first came in, and especially around that idea of God, I had little girl thinking in a big girl body. And I had experiences and feelings and emotions around the God of my understanding from things that happened to me as a little girl. And I took that into my big girl life, into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I placed God in that same box. When anyone said that word, right, I'm picking up my little girl box from over here of what God is and what that means, and what that's going to do to me or what that did to me. And I couldn't, right? That is what I had to say is I'm willing to just take the lid off, right? I know the box still exists. My experiences, all of those things are so real. But the truth is, God never did those things to me, and God never wanted those things to happen to me. People did those things. God loves us enough to give us free will and choice. It is what I love most about Alcoholics Anonymous. I get to choose today. And I lived all of my life thinking I have no choices, right? And then I heard that word powerless, like, yep, see, I'm completely powerless. Where God did for me what I couldn't do for myself is I was willing to just open the lid, and say, maybe there's something else that could exist. And He showed me, Michelle, I love all of you enough that you all have free will. You all have choice. And there are things and hurts in this life we all, right, succumb to. I'm powerless over putting a drink in my body and knowing how that's going to go, right? But the second I was willing to say that, I gain all the power in the world in my choices because it allows me this freedom to live a life today where I'm not bound by drugs and alcohol running my life. And that's God doing for me what I can't do for myself. And so if you're struggling with the idea of what was or what is, again, right? If you can take anything from my journey and relate to any of it, be open to the idea that, when you walk through your inventory, I learned the things that were done to me were not okay, but how I justified becoming, where I justified I get to hurt people because people hurt me. That is my shift of perspective. I don't have that right. I don't want to be that kind of woman. I don't want to move that mark today. And I'm able to show forgiveness and grace to myself and to others, right? But that's through God showing me I need grace and forgiveness. And the more I understood, Michelle, right? I've made mistakes, and man, a lot of them. And yet I'm not a bad person. right? I have a good heart. I live a different life, and I've done good things throughout my life, even in very broken moments. I believe that everyone listening and both of us here today are the same. You know, our hearts are not dark, we are not bad. My little girl thinking was we're good or we're bad, we're right or we're wrong, it's heaven or it's hell. It's and today when I was willing to just, right, open the lid and say maybe there's something else to it, I still actually believe today in the God I was raised with. I just have a much different relationship with him, right? And what doesn't matter in the rooms is what my salvation is, where I believe where I'm going in the hereafter. Like none of those things matter. That's all the personal relationship I get to have. But what's so beautiful is today, like I invite God in. Like my life is better today because he's running the show and not me. And when I was so afraid, right? I was bound by fear. That was a choice where I'm like, I don't want to have anything to do with that. That came from a place of fear and hurt and right, like, and for good reason. My inventory and the steps showed me what my roots were. And then it showed me where that started to go sideways. So God became, right? I could see him. I could see, oh my goodness, right? This is what he meant for me. People mess that up. Here's what he wanted for me. Here's where Michelle messed that up. And now where the redemption is I believe what he right wants for me now, and I'm going to let him do that in my life today.
Beautiful. I love the way you walked through that. Thank you, Michelle. Um, I kind of want to take this into how we work with others in this now, because we are damaged people. Those we work with are damaged people. How do we carry this message of hope, this message of don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. You don't have to burn everything to the ground. Just go back to where things went sideways and then own what, as you said, what Michelle did, what Justin did at that point to make things right. How do you work with others in this place and encourage them to do that?
Working with others, this is my favorite chapter of the big book. I actually will start answering that question with just a small portion of chapter 7 out of the book of Alcoholics Anonymous, working with others on page 89. It says practical experience shows that nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics. It works when other activities fail. This is our 12th suggestion. Carry this message to other alcoholics. You can help when no one else can. You can secure their confidence when others fail. Remember that they are very ill. Life will take on new meaning to watch people recover, to see them help others, to watch loneliness vanish, to see a fellowship grow up about you, to have a host of friends. This is an experience you must not miss. We know you will not want to miss it. Frequent contact with the newcomers and with each other is the bright spot of our lives. That brings tears to my eyes. It really does, because I'm so passionate about working with others. First, I'm so grateful for everyone who's ever gone before me and who held my hand, even when I didn't want them to, who was willing to love me when I had no idea, even if I wanted to love myself or if I could love myself. Their experience in choosing to walk with others is what helped brought me out of the dark. And today I believe that is my purpose in life. It's what the big book says my purpose is, but I look out throughout my entire life. I'm a connector. I love people. I love to know how they tick, where they come from, where they walk. And the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous give me all these beautiful avenues to really be able to walk hand in hand with people. And in the beginning, it's dark. And so I'm not afraid of the dark parts. I never have been. And I'm grateful where people weren't afraid to walk through the dark with me. It reminds us that we are working with people who are very ill. I was very ill. Even in long term sobriety, I look back and without drugs and alcohol in my life, I had other issues come up, right? Where I've had to go back and do some inventories, some therapy, some work, because I was very ill in other areas, like we brought up before, where I was codependent, where other behaviors and actions still affected others. I just have a way to not have drugs and alcohol, bind me and corrupt that. And I have tools today to get through that. But carrying the message, going to meetings, listening to other addicts, to other people who struggle, this is the only part of the big book where it promises that it says ensures immunity from drinking. And I believe in every area that I've ever struggled with addiction, with God prevalent in my life, walking a spiritual path, I believe that I can look honestly at my life. And when I invite him in and I sit with someone else who has struggled with codependency, who has struggled with gambling, who's struggled with a sex addiction, struggled, right, with cutting, I have struggled with many things. And when I sit with another addict, someone who struggles in that same way, and my heart meets their heart, my soul meets their soul, my pain meets their pain, that is the coolest spiritual experience, because God is in those moments, and it always keeps me from choosing to pick up a drink, to pick up a razor, to pick up to watch something, to go somewhere, to it literally ensures immunity, because my heart, it's where our hearts are in the right place. That's the willingness. It's saying I don't want to struggle with this anymore. I don't know how to do it. It tells us we're not meant to do this alone. We're meant to do it with one another. And so the only way we can do that, right, is being as honest as we can in moments like what this says, moments like what we're doing now, and saying, me too. I thought that this was going to bound me forever, and I have found a different way of life. And when you choose to walk hand in hand with in life with people like that, those promises are true. Loneliness vanishes. The moment I give someone the opportunity to look at me back and say, me too, I know I'm not all alone. But when I keep that all inside, right? When I'm running that shame tape of what kind of mom puts her kid in the car and drinks and drives, what kind of mom doesn't come home, what kind of wife isn't faithful, what, right? I can keep going and going. And as long as I run that tape and it stays within me, I stay very ill. So I need someone when they first meet me to remember Michelle is very ill. But when they give their honesty and allow me space to open, I'm not lonely anymore. It is just like it says, fellowship grows up about me. It's already existing between us. I now have a friend that I know will be my friend and knows me more than a lot of my other friends already do. That is an experience I do not want to miss. And it is why I love connecting with newcomers to this day, because God gives me the opportunity. The big book promises that all of the things I used to hate and despise about myself become my greatest assets. This is the moment it's talking about, right? Where I give the opportunity for someone else to share their truth and me to share mine, and to know I'm not alone and we don't have to live that way anymore, that redemption exists. That's the kind of frequent contact I like, that helps every time undoubtedly keep me sober, but brings so much more than just me being sober. It brings love and light and goodness and connection like I never imagined. All that I ever wanted, it gives me in those moments. That is the fruit right there.
That's awesome. And as you were sharing that and talking about how as you share these with others that you're working with, whether it be in rehab facilities, whether it be one-on-one as sponsors, whether it be in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous or any other 12-step fellowship, it brought me to one of the last lines in the first 164 pages. Um, and this is I'm just going to read this. It's still you may say, but I will not have the benefit of contact with you who write this book. I may not have the benefit of contact with Michelle or with Justin or with Robert or with whoever you hear that is like, holy cow, I want what that guy has, what that girl has. I
Mhm.
want that. You may not have the benefit with that, but we cannot be sure. You may be able to
Mhm.
contact us or whoever else.
Mhm.
God will determine that. So you
Yeah.
must remember that your real reliance is always upon Him. And here's the phrase that I really want to dive into. He will show you how to create the fellowship you crave.
Yes.
As you work with others, those people come up around you, and all of a sudden, that fellowship, that companionship, that friendship, that uh, whatever you may call it is right there, and it is exactly what you crave because it's God building that up around you. Do you have any other thoughts on that, Michelle?
That's just so true. That's my entire life. If you would have ever told me, especially 10 years ago, I would be living in Utah as a single mom, working, and And the highlight of my life, the most peaceful, fruitful season of my life would be here in a state I didn't grow up in. I have no family here. I had no friends here when I moved here. Cancer is a part of my story. So I've had medical struggles throughout these 3 years of being here. And when I was willing to say, God, take me where you want me to go, my prayer every day is right when I open my hands, I start my morning every day, but I end that morning process the same. And it's God, may you let me love your children well today. May they see and hear you in me and take me where you want me to go. Show me how to be. I trust you and I give him my day. And I constantly, even being here with you, Justin, it like lights up my heart because this wasn't done on my accord. This is through other people and through God. I know that this is what God has for me. It's why I say yes when doors are opened, but I'm living proof. I wouldn't have planned this life for me this way. But man, I'm so glad I didn't get the life I planned for. I'm so glad I'm willing to just let him keep taking me because where I work, where I live, what I do, where my daughter's at, the people that are in my life, it is more fruitful than I could have ever imagined. And those doors keep opening. So it is that line of the book is exactly true. He will bring, and I trust that he will bring exactly who's needed at the right times. And I will be there with open arms as long as, right, I'm choosing to live in recovery, as long as I keep choosing to allow him space to let that happen. That's the key. I look back and I'm like, well, that didn't happen for so long. I was living in self will. That's where I was selfish and self centered. I'm like, no, I want people, places, and things. I want it to be my way. And the second I lay down my way, he gives me the people, places, and things I tried all my life to make happen on my own. The 9 step promises are so true for me today because he does for me what I could never, ever, ever do for myself. And I tried so hard. It is not without courage and bravery in the fight of I tried so hard, but I can't do it on my own. I have to have him. And with that, right, I get the life that I live today.
Mm. Man, I think that's a really good place to wrap up and that really powerfully. Thank you so much, Michelle. Everybody
Thank
out
you.
there, yeah, you are very welcome. Everybody out there, as you listen to this, if there was something that hit your heart that said, oh, that is something I need to work on, go find somebody that has it, connect with them, build that fellowship up about you, heal relationships or watch relationships heal that you thought were broken beyond belief, and watch God make things do for you what you cannot do for yourself. Man, what a beautiful conversation. Thank you so much, Michelle. We're going
Thank
to talk
you.
again here next month with
I
you
look
or
forward to
or
it.
Robert. So yeah, it's good stuff. Okay, everybody keep coming back. And when
Keep
you do,
coming back.
come all the way in, sit all the way down, work it. You are worth it.